Hello there, and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be painting a Space Marine, or, to be more specific, a Chaos Space Marine. Do we like Warhammer? I love some Warhammer. I've been playing it since I was a kid. My first army was Necrons, and now I have, we'll just say more than 10 armies. But Warhammer has always been a love of mine. I've been meaning to do one of these paintings for a while, and here it goes. So today, Chaos Space Marine, right? Nice, dark, broody, but specifically, we're going to do it in the Zorn style, and that's because of John Blanche. John Blanche is the famous artist that did a lot of the 90s and early artwork that we kind of associate with Warhammer, and his style is very specific. He's an oil painter, and he's been painting for a very long time in the sci-fi industry. And most specifically, when I think of a John Blanche painting, I think of the Zorn style, limiting himself to 4 primary colors, working in and out, using muddy browns. And I forget the original artist that did this a long time ago, but he did it to try to get the most out of just a little bit of color. He was trying to limit his palette and make himself a better painter, and in trying this, I can definitely see where he was coming from. A very limited palette means you really just are thinking about lights and darks and values, less than if I'm trying to actually match what I'm seeing or thinking. So this was a great practice, and I love doing it, and watercolors were a little difficult for this style, but it works. It has a nice rough texture style and a crispiness to it that that you can kind of keep working until you get the values that you want. So even though it was a challenge, it worked, and I really enjoyed this. So in doing the Zorn style, we are limited to yellow ochre, vermilion, ivory black, and titanium white. And really, all the color is going to come from the ochre and the vermilion. The black and white are just to decrease our values. And so, try to think of what kind of colors are just those limited colors going to make. And so we're really limited to the range of reds and yellows that we get out of it. And they're more naturalistic. They're not very vibrant. And then, of course, like what little up and down value we could get out of the black, too. So lots of browns. So that's what we're going to be working with, and we're going to really be limited to just that. Later on, at the end of the painting, I'm going to go just a hair mixed media, but I'm still going to use just those colors. So when I was looking for an example of what I wanted to paint for this, I was kind of leaning towards maybe some more classic looking imagery, or maybe taking some of my models out and photographing them. But such a good resource for something like this is the new Space Marine 2 game, especially because you can edit a lot of the appearances of the Space Marines you play, and their editor, the character selection and everything is really gorgeous looking. So I thought it a waste to not use Space Marine 2 as like a place to get my example artwork for me to use. So I chose one of the Chaos Space Marines, and I just gave him some horns and spiked him up a little bit. You know, made him just a little more mean demeanor. I understand why they don't give like the embellishments in the game, but you know, he just needed a little more attitude for me. So, you may ask yourself, do I play Chaos Space Marines? And I don't. I play Nurgle, and I have a Dark Angels army for Marines, but I've never stepped my foot into the chaotic realm in that way. I would like to, especially with the new rules and how they're kind of separating up the factions a little bit more. A lot of the more evil Primarchs are coming, and the models look great. But I do not play Chaos Space Marines yet. Maybe one day. Still, I have way too many other armies that I'm constantly adding to and finding other stuff for. So it's kind of far down the list, but I'm not saying I won't, because good lord, I already have well over a dozen of these things. So I might get there. I just might have to run out of other factions first. So at this point in the painting, you might be saying, there's a lot going on there. And I do agree, it's kind of a messy painting at this point. But there's a lot going on in the picture. If this was, let's say you were doing, you're trying to recreate like a photo of a horse. A horse tends to be a lot of the same tone, and the only thing that's going to go up and down in value is like the light and the dark. So in watercolor, you can kind of push those colors around to kind of get the basic shape, and your mind will fill in all the other stuff. But this is a pretty complex painting, and if I was to try something like that, I'm not sure I would be able to sell it for what the shapes represent. So I'm going to take a very illustrator approach, take each color, each layer, tone by tone, and just trust the process. I will say, because this is watercolor, there is a point where if you just keep adding and adding and adding and adding, you are just going to get brown. You're just going to get a puddle of brown. So you kind of have to know when you can like push it and lay off. And really, I'm going to push this thing to the limit. Very not naturalistic style. This is much more an illustrative style. But it's kind of what we have to do to get the detail, to make sure everything is visible as what it is. The gun, the horns, the spikes, the armor. They all need their own amount of attention, so they all sell for what they are. So this is pretty much just me finishing up. This is the mixed media part I was talking about. I'm just going to use a black ink pen and a white gel pen to kind of finish off and give it that extra little push that I like to give the end of all my paintings. I don't know if you would consider this cheating, but it's just to get a little more style, a little more rough texture in there that I couldn't quite achieve with the watercolor. I mean, I could have if I used a tiny little brush and got the ink really, really thick, but I figured this was just a faster way to do it. So I always like to talk about things that I liked about this painting and things that I would change, and the things I really like are just what the texture and the line work did to this painting. The number one thing that I would change right off the bat is it took me so many layers to get to that good vibrant red. I think I would have went just for a way more saturated, like thick layer of red and started pushing that around early on. It just would have saved me a lot of time. I would have probably cut off at least a couple hours waiting for this painting to dry from take to take. So I suppose that would be the one thing I would change, but the rest of it I really liked. It was a fun piece to do, and the end result is really amazing. There aren't many that I really like to hang on the wall, but this one I would be proud to hang on the wall. So there it is, a nice, beautiful Chaos Champion, or Chaos something. So what faction do you think this is? I wasn't really going for a faction, I was just using the palette that I had in front of me. Do you play Warhammer? Do you like Space Marine 2? I love Warhammer, and I would like to just hear your opinion. If you like what I did, come back, and remember, paint it, nerd!